The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those Knuckleheads of Liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We're coming at you on January 16th, 2023, which is actually Martin Luther King Day today. And it's a great day to talk about freedom and liberty as far as I'm concerned. So before we get into any of that, we do have a special guest on the show. We're going to be talking specifically about the Free to Choose network and how that can promote liberty and ideas of liberty. Before we get into that, let me introduce you to our panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our lower left-hand corner, we have Tim Everett, our screaming eagle of freedom. He is a pilot in the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have a special guest today, and that is Rob Chatfield. He is president and CEO of the Free to Choose network. And so if you haven't heard of that before, that is the network that is sort of spawned by Milton Friedman's ideas. Certainly he was a big impact on my growth, getting into some of these ideas of liberty. And so before we start diving in on that, I wanted to give you a couple of short video intros just so you can, if you're in the audience, you sort of know who we're talking about Milton Friedman and sort of the reach that he had. So I'm going to reach to our invisible hand. James, can you pull up our first clip about Reagan introducing the television series Free to Choose? And he was obviously a former prominent president of ours. James, roll clip.
In 1980, a friend of mine did something of rare importance that some historians might miss. Dr. Milton Friedman, a scientist, a careful thinker, and a great teacher, first presented his TV series, Free to Choose. His TV series was about choices, risks, freedom, equality, and making a better future for all of us. In 1976, the 200th birthday of our nation, Milton Friedman won the Nobel Peace Prize in economics. 200 years earlier, in the same year as the Declaration of Independence, Adam Smith, the Scotsman, published a book titled The Wealth of Nations. The United States was the first country to apply the ideas in Adam Smith's book. Those ideas have led to our prosperity and given us our freedom. In Free to Choose, Milton Friedman shows us how those ideas can help us today.
So that was Ronald Reagan introducing the reboot of the series in 1990. Let me also bring up a real quick clip of one of Milton Friedman's most powerful ideas in his own words so that you kind of know who we're talking about.
When people are free, they are able to use their own resources most effectively, and you have a great deal of productivity, a great deal of opportunity. The major beneficiaries are always the small man. The man who has power, who's at the top of a society, he's going to do well whatever kind of society you have. It's the society which gives the small man the opportunity to go his way, which is going to benefit him the most.
The society that puts equality before freedom will end up with neither. The society that puts freedom before equality will end up with a great measure of both.
And so that was Milton Friedman in his own words. And now I'm going to hand it over to Rob. Rob, you're the CEO and president of the Free to Choose network. So I'm sure you have a lot of great insights into how this group got started and, and what you guys are doing today. You want to tell us a little bit about your mission and how things are going over there?
Sure. I was going to say, so as you guessed, the guy who filmed this originally, the creator of this series was a guy named Bob Chittister. And Bob actually founded the Erie, Pennsylvania public television station. And there was a 13-hour series called The Age of Uncertainty. And Bob was like, oh my gosh, we got to do something to counterbalance this thing. It was essentially a socialist playbook. And a guy at PBS who was running the Corporation for Public Broadcasting at the time was a guy named Alan Wallace. And Alan Wallace is kind of famous because he went to college with Milton Friedman and with George Stigler. The three of those guys were the Three Musketeers at the University of Chicago. And so Alan Wallace introduces Bob Chittister to Milton Friedman, and the rest is definitely history, if you will. If you watch the original 10-hour series, which is still one of the most viewed videos we have on our website, by the way, at freetocoosenetwork.org. But the Free to Choose series itself is kind of broken into two pieces. First is about 30 minutes of Milton going around the world showing something with regards to freedom, economic freedom, personal freedom, political freedom. Those are those three things that we focus on as an organization. And then there's a 30-minute discussion, roundtable discussion that people today, when I show this to college students or teenagers today, they're amazed that people who completely don't agree with each other can still sit around a table and actually be very congenial and discuss these issues together. And those 30-minute debates sessions at the end of each show, I think, are some of the most outstanding things that you can find anywhere, not only on television at the time, but still on the internet today.
Yeah, it's kind of a who's who too. When you're watching those debates, you see people like, oh gosh, I can't remember who the Secretary of Defense, Rumsfeld, and other people arguing with Milton Friedman. It's really sorry, Leon, go ahead.
No, Rob, you just raised the issue about showing these things on campuses. What is your success on campuses spreading some of Milton Friedman's ideas? I mean, given the condition of our universities today,
well,
in terms of free speech and all those sort of things, how are you guys doing on the campuses?
I'll give you two answers on that one, Leon. We actually try to focus on high schools. We're very, very happy that there is a whole organization of economics professors, business professors out there that readily show this stuff on campus. So this is available to students. I know we hear a lot about, the students essentially being indoctrinated in a socialist environment on campus.
Yes.
It's very true in many cases, by the way, but it's not as though the information isn't out there and available to them. But what we really try to focus on, Leon, is what can we do in the high school level? Can we get these ideas in at the high school level so when the students head off to college that they already have some type of grounding and some type of understanding with regards to that? So Free to Choose Network is best known for doing documentary films for public television, but we'll take components of those films and we'll make 12 to 15-minute videos specifically for the classroom. And we make sure that these fit into state standards for social studies, history, economics, business for all the 50 states in the United States. And that way teachers can use these here within high schools.
Well, can I just slow you down just a little bit? James, if you could pull up, I forgot to share screen at the beginning on the website, but I wanted to bring up the web page too so people can see some of these resources that Rob is talking about here. So this is the freetocoosenetwork.org. That's where you can go to find it. And they have a whole host of video programming and then also a podcast too, I believe, that you can go and check out some of these ideas. They even have, there's the Free to Choose series that we were talking about. And they even come back later and they have kind of a fun one called Testing Friedman, where people are talking about his ideas years later. Anyways, go ahead.
It's still relevant, by the way, to this day here. If you want to scroll up a bit while you got that site on, by the way, some of the classic stuff that we've done here, the Tom Sowell, Common Sense in a Senseless World biography, for example, this achieved over 4 million views on YouTube alone. And we love the comment section on the YouTube because most of the comments are, how come I've never heard of this guy before? And it goes to show that, even us who are in the libertarian space, if you will, and think, oh my gosh, he's got to be the most famous libertarian that's alive today. Most people have still never heard of this guy. Right. And it takes with regards to just the decentralization and the segmentation of the market space in terms of how you have to go out and try to reach people. That's probably the most difficult thing now, Leon, honestly, is can we put something out there that has widespread appeal that's going to reach people who have never seen or heard of this content before?
Indeed.
Well, that brings up a really good point, too, because for me, I know when I grew up, I went to a government public school and I never heard of these ideas. I mean, I never heard of who Milton Friedman was or any of this kind of stuff. And it's kind of understandable because, government school, they're going to be preaching government solutions to problems. And hey, if you want a solution, go vote on it. But Milton Friedman really tried to get at the idea of power through voluntary interaction, the power of organization that happens that way, voluntarily through markets. And those were really powerful ideas, and I just accidentally bumped into that through John Stossel sort of directing me toward Milton Friedman. That was sort of my gateway. And then, boy, once I saw Free to Choose, that really just sort of cleared the path for me on my route down the sort of Liberty Tunnel. But what was it that did it for you, Rob? Because we like to ask this to all of our guests, because it seems to be kind of unique for a lot of people that there's different ways that they sort of woke up to these ideas of liberty.
So my background's finance, actually. And so I discovered Adam Smith, and then Milton Friedman I learned of from the Monetary History of the United States. Talk about being a nerd, right? Even before I had a clue, for years, I didn't have a television set. I never saw Free to Choose, the television series. I knew who Milton Friedman was from economics and finance. And from there, of course, you sort of start branching out. And like many people, I'm a little bit older than the average person here, but, Laissez-Faire Books catalog made its way into my home at one point. I think that's where you start to find all of the stuff in terms of authors. But for me, as I said, I think for most students today also, it's still Hayek, Mises, Rand, and Milton Friedman. Those are the four that are still introducing people to liberty. And they might find it by somebody making a mention of that there, but it's when they take those deep dives, that's what really counts, I think. And I don't believe at all that there's the attention span problem that people talk about these days. We're like, oh my gosh, people have a 2-minute attention span. They're never going to watch 10 hours of Milton Friedman's Free to Choose. My kids, are 18 and 22 now. They'll binge watch Bob's Burgers for an entire weekend. All right. So it's not that there's a short attention span. What it is you got about 2 minutes to capture their attention. But if it's something they're interested in, they're going to watch it.
But I mean, going back to the high school and the campuses for a second year. I mean, we know going on right now, going on in these places is this whole diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense that's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And this to me is the exact opposite to freedom and liberty. But are you guys finding any sort of resistance to introducing those things, like for instance in the high schools in the United States?
Well, it's not like we're bringing heroin and whores into the back door, Leon. We're bringing free market education. We're talking about free societies and all the things that essentially underpin American values. So we haven't had. I will tell you, there's people who don't like our stuff, but we did something really interesting a few years back. During the last election, we had these izzit.org, IZZIT.org is our education affiliate. And Izzit did these I voted stickers. And we told teachers they could have as many I voted stickers as they wanted to, as long as they gave us their election results. And we wanted to know how the teachers voted. Over 50% of the teachers who requested the materials from us voted for Biden. And that tells us that as long as you're putting good material out there into the classroom space, teachers are going to use that material, whether or not they're free market libertarians, or even if they're socialists. We know we've had people that say, hey, I'm going to show you this video to show you how terrible this stuff is. And I love that stuff, because if you're like an anarchist teenager like I was, I'm thinking, oh, my ears are perked up. I want to watch this now. But for the most part, it's we try to just put good product out there with good teaching resources, teachers' guides, everything that a teacher needs to be able to put something into the classroom space. And we found if you create good stuff, they're going to use it.
Okay.
What are some of the biggest successes you guys have had? Sorry, Tim, did you have something you wanted to break in on, or?
No, I'm just adjusting my visual here. That's all.
Okay.
Tim is watching the weather report right now, is what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, with worry on my face. Worry.
Yeah, he's trying to decide if he's free to choose to fly today.
Recent successes, Jason. I'd say a couple of them. And as I said, we talked about the Thomas Sowell biography, which I just think is fantastic. Prior to that, we did a 3-hour series on the U.S. Constitution. How we got the Constitution, how we improved the Constitution. People don't talk about that enough. People look at the Constitution and say, oh, it was written by a bunch of dead white guys, if you will. We shouldn't be ruled by a bunch of dead white guys. Well, we look at it as there was a lot of stuff where they put a framework into place, and over time that has been improved. And I think there's always time for continuous improvement. But the more people understand that the concept of the Constitution was what is government limited to doing, not what are we limited to doing. And so we get that point across. And then we did the third part of that series is the Constitution at Risk. How essentially over the last 100 years, we've really eroded what was the purpose of the Constitution. Yes. We created that series. It aired over 2,700 times on public television stations across America. It came out in January of 2020, and we all know what happened a couple months after that was the world shut down. And so PBS went to something called at-home learning, and they actually chose our 3-hour series as one of the first things that they put on the air in the afternoon for students to watch in terms of social studies. So we were really pleased that the quality of it was there. And when we put stuff, we still use PBS, by the way, as a distribution channel or public television, because it gives you really a stamp of approval in terms of being seen as being educational documentarians. So, we could go out, we could just go straight to YouTube with certain things, but we still try to go through public television because we think that there's a process you have to go through that essentially lets people know this has been vetted. From that series, I love this. During the pandemic, we were trying to figure out what can we film, and we had enough material. And I said, why don't we film Judge Douglas Ginsburg, who is the host of that series, answering the 100 questions for U.S. citizenship. And so on the website civicsfundamentals.org, you can see Judge Ginsburg in 2-minute videos answering each of the 100 questions, but not just hey, what are the 3 branches of government? Judge Ginsburg talks about why we have 3 branches of government. What are the 2 branches of Congress? Well, Judge Ginsburg talks about why we have 2 branches of Congress. And it's to make a law twice as difficult to get passed. As if people understand the reason and rationale behind this stuff, we don't want the citizenship test to just be memorize the answers on a PowerPoint slide and then walk away. We want them to get the ideas behind these things. So those are 2 of the most recent successes we've had with Judge Ginsburg. And as I said, the Tom Sowell project's been a fantastic success.
Wow. Well, Rob, clearly the Constitution have gone. What the framers put in place was to have a government that was limited and with only very few roles to play in our lives. Mm-hmm. But today, I think we have gone way beyond that. Yes. Do you think we are too far down the road in terms of what the federal government is doing at this time in our lives versus what was intended at the inception of the Constitution?
I believe yes, but I think the framework's still there, Leon. If you think about it, you're starting to see it in the courts. We talk about the Supreme Court now having, I don't want to call them conservative judges or, oh my gosh, in terms of what the Supreme Court is trying to do now, I think it's trying to strike down some of the things about the administrative state. The administrative state is what really has been crushing this country. It's the idea that, hey, things are so complex now that we have to have experts solving all of our problems for us. And I don't believe that's in the best interest of America. And again, over the last 80 to 100 years, that's what you've seen is that growth of the administrative state, which is accountable to nobody. And so if we can start to smash the administrative state down into a more limited component, I think then we're going to see the progress again. But until we get court decisions that essentially say administrative state can't do that, Congress has to do that. What you have is, Congress passing laws that don't say anything because they want to say, hey, I voted for clean water. And then they kick it over to the EPA so that the EPA can make up all the rules and regulations. And then the congressman can go back to their district and go, it wasn't me, it was the EPA. I just voted for clean water. So they want to take the credit for doing the wonderful thing, but then pass the blame and pass the buck off to somebody else in terms of how the law is actually made. I think you got to go back to Congress actually making laws. One thing I'm really excited to see is in this upcoming session here, if Congress is actually going to take the time to read the laws or read the bills that they put out there. That was one of the things there. you guys are from California. You know that famous Nancy Pelosi phrase of, we got to pass it to find out what's in it.
Yes, exactly.
It's like, hey, I want to give her a contract for real estate sometime. Just Nancy, sign this.
Yeah.
Don't worry, you'll find out what's in it after you hand over all your property to me. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Well, what's so shocking too is that we're so polarized that you'll see people, and if they happen to be following, her lead, there's like no question of that. It's just like sort of, oh, okay, yeah, we have to pass it to find out what's in it. It just amazes me. It's like, well, how on earth can, like you say, I mean, it's a hell of a sales job, I guess.
And you can tell what's happened also. It's just the power of the national parties. Again, if you are a elected Democratic congressperson, either House or Senate, doesn't matter, but you toe the line. And obviously, this stuff's not coming from you use Nancy and Chuck, if you will, as the boogeymen, if you will. But somebody's really out there driving that agenda, because as you've now discovered, the job of representatives and senators is simply to go raise money to get reelected, so that they can cast the vote for whoever's telling them how they should vote for something. Because if they're not reading the materials, there's no way that they're actually driving the ship. Somebody else is driving the ship behind them. Again, I think that comes from national. And the more we can do to start putting that power back into the states, I think, again, that's going to be another side of the equation that I hope that the pendulum's going to start to shift backward for that.
Yeah. So Rob, one of the things too, I know Milton Friedman, and I forgot to mention this before the podcast, but it occurs to me that one of the key things that he was focused on was education, and the idea of school choice was a big deal for him. And I guess does your Free to Choose network have a big tie into that, and how are his ideas, well, I guess, working out there right now? I mean, we're starting to see some real wins on school choice.
So a couple of answers on that one. So from a Free to Choose network perspective, we did a 3-hour program that we helped finish off with Andrew Colson, who unfortunately passed away while he was filming the project, called School Inc. So anybody looking for essentially the lay of the land on school choice, it's a fantastic film to see. Our own organization, we're non-political. We don't get involved. I told you, we try to put our materials into the public schools. And so for us, we're not big players in what I'll call the voucher game or the school choice game. Doesn't mean we don't support that, because we support choice for everybody. But the one area that we've decided we go into is where school choice has always existed, and that is in career tech education, which we used to know as vocational education back in the day. If you think about it, these are students who within the public school system have chosen some other avenue to be educated. They want to become the auto mechanics. They want to become the cosmetologists. They want to become the electricians of tomorrow. And I think that that's an avenue within the public school system that we're going to try to emphasize even more, is that there's a lot more choice within public schooling than people imagine.
I've got an unrelated question. It's kind of if I was a Austrian economist playing devil's advocate to Friedman type of economic thought, I would ask the question. It'd be a rhetorical question, but it would be if there was freedom to choose a rate at which the money supply increased, and considering that Friedman was a Chicago school guy that believed that the rate of money creation should be in the 2 to 3% range. And we all know that the rate of productivity may be off from that, maybe up or down from that. And where an Austrian may say, hey, if you're really free to choose everything, you should be able to be free to choose your money supply, the rate at which it expands or contracts or whatever. And so, we should not have a set formula that some central bank controlling authority follows. We should allow the free market to decide that. So how Rob, how would you respond to that question? If, it was, wouldn't it be better if it was Austrian?
I thought it was rhetorical, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. sorry about that.
You know,
I'm the guy. I'm the Austrian, so I threw in my prejudice right there.
there's a I have to interject with Hayek always said, the reason Mises was an Austrian was because he was too lazy to do the math, right? So yeah, I look at the money supply issue, and again, from Friedman's perspective, Tim, what he was trying to really get at was, as long as something was known and identifiable beforehand, that you didn't have wild swings on it, then that would be, you could make decisions from the long-term perspective with regards to that. So from that side of the equation, I can agree with Milton Friedman. Personally, you probably guessed, hey, I'm a gold and silver guy. Who am I kidding? I'm a hard money guy. I always have been for my entire life. I think that's probably the correct answer for me. I do think one of the questions I get a lot, though, is what would Milton Friedman have thought of cryptocurrency?
That's what I was going to follow up with here.
The closest I can get is telling you that David Friedman certainly believes that there was an avenue for cryptocurrency, having some kind of fixed supply, but you still had to have the fluctuations in pricing on cryptocurrency was such that from a money perspective, you can't use it as money. It's just, there's no way in terms of using it as currency yet. I do know a couple of people that swear that they pay everything via crypto, if you will, and good luck to them. All right. But, I still can't picture going to the gas pump saying, well, today it's going to cost me $17 and tomorrow it's going to cost me $5 because the swings of the currency.
What's interesting, because Milton Friedman just was, he passed just before crypto started to become a thing. So, but anyways, we are getting really close to the end of the show. And Rob, I wanted to give you a chance to say if any, are there any challenges your organization's facing? And are there any last thoughts you'd like to share with the audience as well? And James, maybe you could bring up the website too, just to assist in the very end here.
I think you can look at, I was going to say, it's what's coming soon, actually, Jason. So we're still working with Judge Douglas Ginsburg, one of the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life. He's going to do a 1-hour program on the Declaration of Independence. But rather than look at the old dead white guys, he's really looking at those magical words and the worldwide influence of the Declaration. Boy, if you think about where we've come within the last 250 years, where essentially it was ruled by king. It was ruled by conqueror, and now more than half the nations in the world have some kind of Declaration of Independence. What a change in just the last 250 years. And that means more freedom, by the way. That means more consent of the governed. So that's what we're looking at there. And then we have with Nadine Strawson, a wonderful, wonderful professor at New York University, huge free speech advocate. Nadine's going to do a 3-hour series with us on free speech. We have a working title of that one called Free to Speak. And I cannot wait for that program to come out. And that's going to look at juxtaposing stories that really challenge people's belief. If you believe in this free speech, then you got to believe in this free speech over here. Or if you want to cancel this, then you better cancel this over here, because they're two sides of the same coin.
Wow, I can't wait. That sounds great. So I'll definitely be looking out for that on the freetochoosenetwork.org, everybody. But thanks so much again, Rob, for joining us today. And thank you all out there for watching. Go check out that Free to Choose Network. There's some interesting stuff there. And we'll see you at the next one. Until then, stay free.
Thank
Yes,
you.
indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.